right, Titus chapter 2, verse 7. And before we even read the text, I want to highlight something and a difference in punctuation. Obviously, the punctuation is not original to the text. Originally, these scriptures were not written with punctuation. You notice off to the left here, we have the SBL that has a semicolon at the end of verse 6 and then picks up with peripanta. Now, if you note off to the right, our PDF here, it does not have any punctuation at the end of verse 6. Sophronein, there's no punctuation there. Picks up here, and then there's the comma here. So that tells you that the way the UBS 5, which is what's seen off to the right here, the way the UBS 5 breaks this down is really to see the first part of verse 7 actually goes with what's above. So that would then read, likewise, exhort the young men to be self-controlled or to be sensible in everything. So there's two different ways to read this, and depending on where you put the punctuation determines how that's read. So I'll read it as if it's connected to verse 7, but note that the UBS 5 puts it above. All right, that said, reading the text. Peri panta seauton parekomenos tupon kalon ergon en te didaskalia athrapion semnatetai. Sorry, that was a bumpy flight. All right, so reading through that in the NASB alongside that. And then obviously you can see NASB with their punctuation favors the way the SBL broke that down. But in all things, show yourself to be an example or a type of good works with purity in doctrine, dignified, here's the in doctrine, with purity in doctrine, and then the last word there is dignified. So the first prepositional phrase, again, we kind of already touched on the fact that it could go either way, depending on where your punctuation is, but in all things or concerning all things. So either concerning all things, show yourself, or concerning all things, young men are to be self-controlled. This parakomenos is the idea of showing yourself. So it's a participle. It's not merely another imperative, but because in line here is Paul giving instructions and imperative commands to Titus of what he needs to be commanding, it makes sense to convey this in a imperatival sense of you show yourself, but you could also have the idea of showing yourself, the idea of this is coming alongside of what's already being the main command. So the idea of do you translate it as an attendant circumstance or as a kind of a modifier to the other imperative. So be showing or show, what is it you are to show? We have the accusative second person pronoun here, show yourself. And then here we have to supply to be, show yourself to be, and then another accusative, a type or an example. And then kalon ergon. These are both in the genitive case, so a type of good works or an example of good works or good deeds. And then the NASB translates this preposition en as with, but you could take it as in. So either showing yourself as an example in purity of teaching, in pure teaching, or it could be with. So this is kind of the means by which you show yourself to be a good example, is through pure teaching or purity in doctrine. And then this last word is the word that we translate dignified. Just doing a brief lookup on that word. It's used only a handful of times. All 3 times are in the pastoral epistles, and the DBL translates this as propriety, seriousness, or respectful behavior. So dignity really does capture that sense of just a seriousness and a gravity to his character. So these are commands given to Titus, that he, of course, is to be, in this regard, an example, which is important because he's to be an example in these things. It also means that others are supposed to follow suit. So it's not just he's to be an example of this, and this is a standalone case and situation, and he doesn't need to worry about passing this on to others. Rather, all of this is that he's to be an example in these things so that others are also imitating him. So that is Titus chapter 2, verse 7.